Whitney Lowe offers advanced clinical massage trainings via hands-on workshops, online programs, books, and DVDs. He's also the co-author of Education and Training Solutions, a company that produces online education for massage therapy and alternative health organizations. Whitney and Jan have organized with Books of Discovery. I would like for you to be sure to head over to the booth at Books of Discovery to understand some of the new programs. And Books of Discovery is one of our speaker sponsors, our only speaker sponsor for the last 2 years. And so I want to introduce Whitney Lowe. Thank you very much for being here.
All right, thank you all very much. It's great to be here with you this afternoon or this morning here in St. Louis. I always love getting to have the opportunity to talk with and share things with educators. It's my very favorite group of people to work with, so it's a wonderful opportunity to learn from you and share some things with you. What I want to do today, I want to talk about some things that the top of our talk is developing the 21st century teacher. And the thing is, teaching and education are really a lot different than it was not really that long ago. We have some, I think, serious challenges facing us as educators for the future in terms of preparation and looking at things that we need to do to be good teachers for the future. So I want to talk today about some of those primary challenges that we have and some of the things that are coming down the pike that we need to be aware of and what we can do as educators to be most prepared for the things that are coming to meet us. I want to start this off with talking about something that I have talked about at a couple different events and conferences before, so some of you may have heard this, but it is, I think, so pertinent as a framework for framing the discussion of what we're looking at here today. This is something called the Rip Van Winkle syndrome. Most of you probably remember the story of Rip Van Winkle. He goes and falls asleep for 20 years and wakes up and he comes into a completely different society. Everything's changed. His wife's gone. People don't know him. The world has changed all around him. And so there's a corollary to the Rip Van Winkle story in the education community, which is that Rip Van Winkle fell asleep 150 years ago. He comes back in modern day times. He sees these things whizzing by on the roads. There's sounds overhead. These big, giant metal birds are flying through the sky. People are walking around like this, looking at their hands all the time. The world is completely unfamiliar to him. And then he walks in a building, and he sees a group of desks all facing towards a board on the end of the wall, into this room. And he said, I know what this is. This is a school. It looks exactly like it did in my day. That's part of what poses this challenge and problem for us, which is the world has changed dramatically around us, and education has not changed to that same degree. And my argument is we are at a Rip Van Winkle moment now. There are a number of things that are coming together to make this change inevitable for us. So we've got some challenges that are coming down the pike for us. Some big challenges that we want to face. So I want to talk about a few of these big challenges that we're going to face first, and then how they're going to impact us and what we're going to do about them. The first of these, this is kind of interesting. I just stumbled across this story in the news. Some of these things are directly related to what's going on in higher education, not necessarily in trade school institutions. Now, we have massage programs that are housed within traditional higher education institutions and community colleges and sometimes even four-year colleges. But I think it's very important that we watch a lot of the trends that are happening in higher education because they make their way into what's going on with us. This graphic that I'm going to show stunned me. And to give you a little precursor to this, if you have college-age children or have children going to college sometime in the future, this may scare you as well because it freaked me out. Okay? Here in this graph is an example of This is a 30-year comparison. Back in the early 1980s, that's when I went to college. The median income is represented by this blue line here. These lines represent the percent of increase in tuition costs at college compared to median household income. This highest line, public four-year colleges, have increased in costs close to 250% compared to the median household income, which has not really done much at all in 30 years. That means the cost of going to school compared to what a family makes in income is now outrageous. And I'm sure many of you have heard lots of the stories of students coming out of school with $40,000 and $50,000 in debt that they can't find jobs to make, their payments to make this up. This is a huge issue. It's also something that poses a tremendous opportunity for us in our field because we can train people for an occupation at much less cost than a traditional four-year college degree. Now, there's a lot of argument, you hear a lot of buzz and discussion in our field about, well, we need to move to having a four-year college degree. That may not be really the best road for us because there's been a lot of other studies that have looked at what people get out of their college degree compared to what they actually have to put into it. And in terms of the business frame of reference of this about the return on investment, it's not turning out so good. It's really not turning out so good. So this poses a huge challenge for us, but also is a tremendous opportunity for us with a number of other things that may be coming down the pipe as well. Another thing that we got to grapple with, this is an outstanding report that I would encourage you to take a look at. It's authored by a woman named Amy Leitinen, I guess, I don't know how to pronounce her last name, Laitinen, is a report that was produced by a group called the New America Foundation. It's called Cracking the Credit Hour. And what this report discusses is the way in which we have consistently focused measuring education by time. We always have these things that are measured in credit hours. How long is your program? Well, we got a 500-hour program, we got a 750-hour program. But the point of all this should be, how good is your program? What do people get out of it? And one of the things that I found most fascinating about this particular report with this issue with credit hours, and I had not known this until reading and looking into this a little bit, the traditional credit hour, which is used to measure education, not only in our field, of course, but in higher education across the board, was never intended to be a measure of whether or not you completed a certain degree of education. The credit hour was actually developed by Andrew Carnegie as a measure of whether or not faculty qualified to get a pension program. Like, had they spent enough time in the classroom to qualify to get a pension program? But it turned out to be very convenient and easy to use as a measure also of what was done in class. But this was interesting because the Carnegie Foundation that started this adamantly stated when they did this should not be a measure of competence in what occurs in the classroom. It should only be used as a measure of what we're doing with these professorships. Didn't work that way. Why not? Because it's pretty darn convenient to measure and equate education with time. But one of the things that we're now seeing is education is coming in so many different forms. Education is not time. What somebody accomplishes in 1 hour of time in one locale can be accomplished in a much different amount of time in another locale. It's just different. Time is not our equation. So this is one of the big challenges that we have coming down the pipe for us as well. Everybody that's involved with the school knows this is a problem now, or an issue that we see declining enrollments. This is happening in a number of different educational institutions. We see a quick show of hands, those of you who here are continuing education providers and not associated with the school. So a good number of CE providers. You all have probably seen this. I know I have seen this as a CE provider, declining enrollments in CE courses as well. So it's affecting not only the schools, but also those who are doing continuing education. So we need to look at what does that mean? Why do we see those numbers going down, and what does it mean to try to continue being able to serve the community while we're addressing some of those numbers going down. And here's one for the Alliance, of course, very interested in this topic. Okay, The fact that we have teacher standards that are, well, we don't have teacher standards, do we? Okay? We have teacher qualifications that are not measured by anything, and we have a great discrepancy in the quality of teaching that goes on in many of our educational institutions. This is something that I'm very glad to see the Alliance working on with the Teacher Education Standards Project. It's been badly needed for a very long period of time, and of course it dramatically affects what goes on with all the future generations of practitioners that come down the pipe. And this is something that I've been hollering about for years, because as a CE provider, I have witnessed, and this is just an opinion, there's no data on this, but it certainly has been confirmed when I speak with a lot of other CE providers that over the last 20 or so years, the preparation level of massage therapists who are coming into CE classes has gone down significantly. They don't know what they used to know. They don't come in as prepared. They don't have as good as skills as they used to have. And that says something about what's happening with our schools and entry-level education. So we've got to do something to address this. The Teacher Education Standards Project is certainly a good measure to go in that direction. Now here's another one that rattles a lot of folks, especially people from, I said this to David and Stephanie in the car yesterday, those of us who are getting some degree of more chronologically experienced have a little bit more trouble with this. But technology is here to stay, and it is going to become a bigger and bigger part of what goes on in people's lives, in students' lives, and in teaching processes and education. So we need to break ourselves out of resistance to this and be ready to address and grapple with how we're going to incorporate that in what we're doing. So you put all these things together, and what I see that we've created here is a perfect storm of change to address our rib family moment. So all these things are now coming together at the same time, and that means we're going to see some significant major changes happen for us. So now what do we do? How do we grapple with this? Well, it means we are going to have to grow. We're all about teaching our students to change and grow and expand and do what they're doing. And now we are seeing that we've got to also keep doing this ourselves. We cannot keep isolated in our little cubicles, nor can we keep doing the things that we have always been doing for years. We're going to have to get out and do some things differently. And sometimes that's going to mean for us jumping into the icy water to dive into some new experiences that are potentially uncomfortable or different for us. But these are the key parts of us changing and being able to adapt to what's coming down. So now let's take a look at some of the things that play a part in this and what this actually means on a day-to-day basis for us in the classroom. This classroom, okay, this is the classroom process that we've used for years. Desks, chairs facing towards the person who's at the front of the stage, which we familiarly refer to as the sage on the stage teaching model. And it's what most of us grew up with in school. It's been the dominant model in education for a long time. But there's been some really interesting questioning of whether or not this is really the best way to do a lot of the things that we do in teaching. For anybody who's seen or taken a look at Salman Khan's book, and I'm going to speak about him a little bit more later on, he's got a book called The One World Schoolhouse, which is a great discussion of some of the new methods that are being used in the classroom. And he addresses some really interesting things about the history behind the way we teach. That this particular model of teaching in this format was really good for preparing students for what they were doing 100 years ago, which is most likely finding jobs in the factories and in places where there was a relatively automated type of activity like this. Okay? When you put people in these chairs and the bell rings and everybody comes and goes at the same time and you've got one person telling everybody how to do something, that works pretty well for training people to be in this type of work environment. But as most of us know, this type of work environment has moved away from our country for the most part. And especially in our field, this is not what people do. Because if you're not working on these kind of assembly line processes, we have a very diverse group of skills that we need to get here. And clearly, one size doesn't fit all for this. But not only one size, one of the big arguments that Salman Khan makes in his book about the traditional lecture format is that it is a one-pace-fits-all process. And this is something that a lot of students grapple with. And I hadn't really given this a lot of thought until reading about this and thinking about the way in which, you know, sometimes you're talking about something and you just get through saying a point and somebody raises their hand and says, like, someone said, like, it's the thing that you just said. You know, what goes through your mind, like, didn't I just get through saying that? And, you know, you feel like you want to say to that person, weren't you listening? But you know what? Maybe they were, but they were also writing notes about what you were saying. And if a person is writing notes about what you're saying, the auditory process is following along with what they're saying and seeing in their handwriting, and they can't listen to you at the same time with that level of clarity. So they may have been absolutely paying attention to you and didn't catch it because you're continuing to move on, but they stopped to take notes. And maybe they didn't quite get it. And when I read this thing in his book, it was a real flashback for me about an extremely traumatic experience in my childhood. Well, I shouldn't say it wasn't extremely traumatic, but it was problematic, okay? When I was in elementary school, I'd always been a straight A student and got good grades, and you know, it came pretty easy to me. It was not that big a deal. And where I went to school, y'all can tell that I live in Oregon now, and I'm not originally from that part of the country. I still have a little bit of my accent. I grew up in Atlanta. Where I went to school, high school started at 8th grade. There was no middle school. So it was a kind of challenging environment, first of all, to be an 8th grader in high school. And I was, you know, like 4'5" in 8th grade, and I was a really shrinky little kid. Anyway, I got put in algebra class with all my other classmates, which was kind of the advanced math track. And all of a sudden, math problems had letters in them. You know, there was all this alphabet. There was X's and Y's, and A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And for some reason or other, that just totally blew my mind. Because I couldn't get past, what if it's not A and B? You know, what if it's like G and H? What do you do then? You know, because I had always like everything had to fit into structure and exactly. And that conceptual jump into these are only representations of things, they're not really set. But I couldn't get past that. I was making C's and D's and F's in math class. It's like, how could I be making F's in math class? And I ended up dropping out of the class and having to retake it the next year. And got a math tutor to help me figure out, you know, sort of learn my way through algebra. And that was a really interesting, when I thought back on this, that was a perfectly good point because I could never get that teacher to slow down enough in class to explain to me that it doesn't matter if it's X or Y or S or T or whatever, this is only a representation. But that one-pace-fits-all process can be a real challenge in this traditional lecture type of format. So we've got to maybe look at, maybe that's not the best way to do a lot of the things that we do in the classroom, and there's some other ways that we need to look at grappling with. So here's one way that I've been working with for quite a number of years that I feel is very important and needs to work its way deeper into what we do in massage education. Problem-based learning is a teaching method that many of you probably know emerged out of the medical school, started at McMaster University in Canada back in the 1970s. And it's just conceptually, the idea is instead of piling on lecture content to people, give them real-world problems that incorporate the content you want to teach them and have them work through problems in a real constructive way. And this gets them to apply the knowledge in a way that's going to be used in their real-life practice. And research has repeatedly shown that the more you have a situation that learning looks like what happens in real life, the more accurate and the greater is the retention level for what gets done in that classroom. So these are some great strategies that I'd like to see us learning to employ a great deal more in massage education, is to get away from some of the traditional, teacher talks to the students and tells them everything, students just simply memorize it. Because, the other thing that got me looking at this was, for years, and this is predominantly again teaching in the workshop, the CE environment, but I would go through what I thought was a great lecture about shoulder pathologies or something like that, and all the different orthopedic components of biomechanical stuff. And then after lunch, we'd come back and I'd ask the students a question related to what we did this morning that was applying those concepts. And I get this, deer in the headlights look. Like, come on, we did this stuff. We went all through it. But the question was out of context to what we had done with simply going through the lecture content. Well, I realized at that point what so many teachers need to kind of remember is that just because I said something doesn't mean it was said in a way that people get it and learn something from it. And this is a real important thing. Just because something appears as a teaching objective or because it's something that you go over in class doesn't mean that people really get it. Until you can often put that content in a way that it's used, that's when people may realistically get it. So we have this student frequently, okay? Anybody have a student? Okay. Right, you may not have a student. That should be the better question, okay? And I'm sure we're all tired of hearing this question, but you know what? This is a great question. And it really needs to be asked more frequently. Because we often say, well, this is on the curriculum, it's all the thing, that's why we do this kind of thing. But realistically, what does it have to do? What does this have to do with what I need to know to be a professional massage therapist? In every course and class activity that we're doing, we should be able to tell somebody, here's why you need to know this, because it's really relevant. And in massage, for example, when we do this really well with massage technique classes for the most part, because what we're teaching is here's the skills that you're going to do when you go out and start doing these types of physical activities or physical interventions with people. So that is truly contextual learning. We're showing them what to do, and this is what they're going to do when they go out and do the practice stuff. But we've really not done that so well with many of the other cognitive type subjects that we address in the classroom: anatomy, kinesiology, business, and ethics, and pathology, all those other things which are having people pretty much sit and listen to somebody talking to them. So my encouragement is let's try to find some ways that really get this guy's question answered more effectively, which is, here's how this is going to immediately come into play, and problem-based learning will do that. Those kind of strategies will help you get to the point of being able to do that. Now, another thing that's affecting our work as educators, and I'm so glad to see this because, as Pete mentioned, I'm one of those kind of people who really likes to know why. I've always got to know why. If there is some research to back up and discuss what's going on, that is a big factor for me. And research has changed a lot of what we are doing in the classroom, and will continue to change that a great deal, because no longer, nowadays, can the teacher often get away with just winging it on some concept or factual stuff and going along with the many myths that have been promulgated throughout our field for so very long. As you know, in our field, we have had and continue to have this sort of guru educational model, which is there's a lineage of, I learned from so-and-so, which learned from so-and-so, which learned from so-and-so. You see the same kind of thing in like the martial arts community or the spiritual disciplines or whatever it is. That whole idea of we're following this lineage that came from, there's some figurehead at the top of it who's the great, creator, inventor of Jurassic myokinesthetic cranial technique, whatever they're thinking of, okay? And I studied with so-and-so, and they studied with so-and-so, so now it goes this filtering down thing. But that also gives us the great opportunity to promulgate all kinds of factual inaccuracies that are based on somebody's pet theories about stuff. And now that we've got research to back up a lot of the things that we do, and we're trying to start now teaching people how to read research, it's going to change a lot of what goes on in the classroom. And I know I have found this challenging as an educator but I also like the challenge, which is that if I say something in class, I better be damn sure that I can be backed up about that, because somebody's going to Google it while I'm talking to the rest of the class and see if it's true or not. Okay? That didn't used to happen. Many years ago, you could get away with saying some wacky stuff. Nobody. 3 weeks later, somebody said, "Hey, is that?" "Oh, I don't know if I said that. I don't think I said that." Not anymore. Okay? You're on it now, so somebody's gonna Google you and see if you're actually accurate. But that is great, and that's something that we should be encouraging. I say this a lot in the workshops that I teach, and I know a lot of teachers are not comfortable with this, but we've got to find a way to, which is that bumper sticker that was so popular back in the 60s. It said, "Question authority." We need to do that a lot more. We need to teach the students to do that a lot more, because that's the inherent beginning of critical thinking skills that are essential in the clinical environment where they're going to work. They need to learn how to question things and not just blindly accept the stuff that comes down the pipeline. So, as part of this whole process, we got to teach the students a little bit more about this, but we as educators too have to get more comfortable in this world, in the sense of it's a world that some of us weren't necessarily so familiar with, because when I went to school, we didn't talk about research literacy. That didn't come up as a buzzword until much more recently, obviously. So this is some things that we got to work on as educators as well. Now, another big thing for us coming down the pipe, and this has to do with, like I said, with the students Googling stuff in the classroom. We've got a whole new world of students that are learning in a whole new way. And their process of learning is highly social. It's about Facebook, it's about Twitter, it's about Flickr, it's about Pinterest, or whatever it is, that they are sharing and learning things. And this learning process is highly social. And so we've got to start looking at, how might we incorporate this process in what we're doing in the classroom. Because the social aspect of this has great potential, so that it's not, again, a one-way delivery of information from the all-knowing expert to the sponges that are all out there in the room supposedly just soaking it all in. But the interactive process, the fact that somebody can, get on their device and work with and talk with another student who's 300 miles away or 3,000 miles away or a world away on the other side of the planet, has a tremendous degree of opportunity for us to take advantage of. Many of you know I've been quite involved with online education for a number of years, and I run an orthopedic massage program that focuses on clinical reasoning skills. It's predominantly, it is an online course. And, we have students right now from Yugoslavia, Australia, US, of course, Japan, all in this course simultaneously, and the opportunity to sort of talk amongst each other. Wow, the other students get to learn, what is massage like in the Eastern Bloc countries, And I'm learning a tremendous amount now, too, about what is this world like. And so this social aspect of the learning that's coming down the pike has a great deal of influence, potentially, on what we're going to be doing in the classroom. So, and how we take advantage of that as an educator, to educate ourselves, there's lots of different ways to do that. People come and ask me a lot, should I go get a degree in this? Should I go become a PT, or should I go get a degree in kinesiology or education? I'm interested in teaching. Should I go back and get an education degree? And my answer, almost invariably, as a perpetual student, my parents, who I dearly have so much appreciation for their emphasis on education for us, told my sister and I that they would pay for us to go to college. They didn't count on the fact that it was going to take us multiple colleges to get through a bachelor's degree. There was not this qualification on that. And it took me 4 colleges to get through my bachelor's degree. 6 if you count the 2 of them that I went to twice at 2 different times. And so, by the time I was at, the 4th or 5th installment there, my mom was like, you know, we need to kind of revisit this idea of, you know, paying for college. Like, is there really an end point coming down the pipe? But, you know, and I have 2 partially completed graduate degrees, so I didn't stop that process of jumping in and out of schools. But I have always been a perpetual learner. And one of the reasons why is that I think so much education does not exist in traditional environments, in many instances, as the sole exclusive place to learn. I really push this topic and concept with people a great deal, which is what's called your personal learning network. As an example, now with the web and its capabilities, you know, we've got discussions with leading educators on Facebook. I've got people that I follow on Twitter related to e-learning concepts and instructional design methods. You know, I can block them into these categories. These are the people I want to follow related to instructional design concepts. These are the people that I want to follow related to software engineering things that I have to learn about. These are the people I want to follow related to pathology and orthopedic disorders. And that whole network of people that you develop expands you out into so many things, whether it's, you know, reading blogs every day or articles that somebody links to. All of the experts that are out there that become linked into your network of people become that personal learning network. And you know, I have to tell you, it's way better than school. You know, in my opinion, it's just because the thing about this is it's what we call just-in-time learning. I got to find out something about how to do this particular thing, or where was that article I saw about, you know, credit hour things or whatever. I can jump to my personal learning network or like put a note out there, hey, where is this kind of stuff? And immediately that kind of thing comes in, and now I can apply that directly to the concepts of what I'm looking at. So these are some of the things that I think take us into looking at education in a new way. And there are clearly some ways we can take advantage of this as massage educators, whether you're in the CE environment or whether you're in the traditional classroom. There's lots of places to get here. So what we see with this personal learning network now is it's also bringing in this tidal wave of technology in education. And this is kind of back to what I was saying at the very beginning of, I know that lots of people have some concerns and apprehensions about this, but it is a tidal wave that is coming into education, and it's better that we take some time to really learn how to explore it, learn how to use it, and learn how to take advantage of it, because there's huge potential here. Now, a few of these things that I'm going to talk about here are particularly related to what's going on in higher education. They have not appeared on the horizon as early yet in the massage profession, but I will promise you they're coming down the pipe. So it's important for us to kind of be aware of what some of those things are that are coming down the pipe. Many of you may be familiar with this concept of what's called the flipped classroom. How many people here have not heard about the flipped classroom? Okay, raise your hands high so we can kind of see. So that's maybe a third to a half of the class. So the flipped classroom it's not something that's really new, but the way in which it's being implemented, there are some new facets of it. What this essentially means in a flipped classroom, traditionally, in a classroom experience, the teacher gives the content to the students in what might be traditionally like a lecture format. And then the students go home and do the homework or the classroom exercises, supposedly applying the concepts that they learned in the classroom lecture content. The problem with that is, and here's a picture of Salman Khan, who is the director of the Khan Academy. I'll talk about him in just a moment, where he fits into this picture. The problem with this, and this is what Salman Khan talks about in his work, is that the classroom experience, the one pace fits all, often leaves the student unprepared to go home and do their homework. That's what happened in algebra class. I couldn't go home and do my homework because I didn't understand the stuff that was being talked about in the classroom. So I'm really stuck now. Then we go back into the classroom the next day and we're moving on to the next topic. That was really problematic for me. So what the flipped classroom does is it takes the primary lecture content or the course content material that you want to cover, and it has students do that outside of class before they come in. So like in the old days, you got assigned to read chapter 3 before you came to class. People probably didn't read chapter 3 before they came to class, and it was not that big a deal because the teacher was going to lecture about it anyway. Okay? But now in this model, it gives us the opportunity actually to do a number of different things, especially with some technological involvement, such as with videos where you can have short sections of content in these small video clips that go over a particular topic, and a student can rewind it, and see it as many times as they need to till they really get it. And there's opportunities for them to do other types of exercises before they come into class, and that means the class time can be used for other things like the contextual learning, the problem-based learning structures, ways in which the teacher lets the students become more interactive with each other and not simply sit here and talk to them the whole time. Now, where Solomon Kahn fits into this, he was a Wall Street hedge fund analyst. Brilliant guy. Went to school, and I can't remember what his original degree is in, something like economics, I think it might have been. And he had a niece who was struggling in school in math. I can relate to her. Okay? She was having math problems and in calculus. And I never made it to calculus. So I don't know what the problems were there, but she was having those same kinds of problems. And he started trying to do some tutoring sessions over the phone with her. It wasn't quite working, so he said, look, let me just, I've got some, like a little graphics tablet on my computer, let me just do some things and I'll record this stuff on my computer and send it to you so you can look at it. But he recorded these little videos explaining differential equations or whatever it was that she was having problems with. And he ended up uploading these video clips to YouTube. And she was in Texas, he was in New Jersey, I think it was. And she found them extremely helpful before getting into each day's class topic to be able to go over this. And so she starts sharing them with her classmates. And before long, like what happens when a video starts to go viral? They were being shared with love, and all of a sudden they're looking on YouTube and they've got 1,000 hits on these videos. Who's watching this stuff? Somebody's watching this stuff and getting something out of it. So he started making more and more of these videos. And it started being like not 1,000 hits, 10,000 hits. And then it was in the hundreds of thousands of people watching these video clips. And so what he started doing was making a very large library of short topic clips on math, economics, all kinds of subjects. He ventured way out of his original areas to do things like biology, anatomy, all kinds of different subjects in these short YouTube clips. And many school systems are now taking the Khan Academy video clips. And the other thing about this, it's all free. It's all accessible and it's all free. The school systems are taking the Khan Academy video clips and building their classroom models around using this flipped classroom model and finding it highly successful in the outcomes that they're getting with their students. The students are far more engaged, they're really interested in what they're doing, and these processes are really taking them into a new place of what they can get accomplished in the classroom. So this is something that I think holds great potential for us also in the massage world. And I've been doing flipped classroom processes in the CE world because I found a tremendous amount of difficulty trying to cover the amount of content that I wanted people to get in just a 2-day workshop. There was no way to cover it all. So I started having people do some of these content modules before they come into the workshop and even after they go out. But we still get to interact as we're working together online with this, so I can make that workshop experience way longer than it ordinarily was and give them a much better educational experience out of it. So there's a lot of potential for us to take this model and do something new with it here in the massage profession. Another model that right now has captivated a lot of what's going on in higher education is the MOOC. Okay? How many people have not heard of MOOCs? Raise your hand. Yeah, fairly close to half the group here. So a MOOC is a massive open online course. Massive open online course. Let me give you just a little bit of history of how the MOOCs emerged, because these are really new. This word has only been bandied about since about 2011, so we're only talking about a couple of years that this has been sort of out and around. But there have been online courses available for a long massive open online course is one in which there's sort of a facilitator or guide, but you may have a tremendously large number of students taking the course. And the idea behind most MOOCs is that they are free. That there's the idea being there's free access to education for students. And the way they got started, well, not necessarily it started, but one of the ways it's begun to get popularized has happened out of Stanford University. In about 2011, the computer science department ran or put together several MOOCs as an experiment to see how many people they would get enrolled in these courses. And they were doing some courses on computer science and one in artificial intelligence. Each of those courses had enrollments that were approximating 100,000 students in them. Now, they were totally unprepared for that size of a group. In fact, the artificial intelligence class that they set up had 160,000 people enrolled in it. Now, these are students from all over the world enrolling in this. The idea behind this was you can get a Stanford artificial intelligence course if you live in Ethiopia and take that course for free. And if you think about that for a moment, what that makes possible for people in terms of access to education who would ordinarily not have that capability, it's tremendous. A tremendous possibility. The big challenge for MOOCs is, can they be as relevant as a classroom course that covers the same content? My personal opinion is that MOOCs are still in their infancy and have a long way to go to grow into a really good, high-quality educational experience. But this model itself is something that is very interesting and potentially highly disruptive to our current educational system. Okay? Because think about the higher educational system. One of the things that MOOCs aren't doing much of yet is giving you credit for that course. You can take the course for free, but you're not going to get course or college credit for it. Well, some of the universities now are saying, hey, we're going to offer credit for a MOOC, which means that you might start seeing college degrees not costing tens and tens of thousands of dollars, but in fact being close to free. If I'm a college administrator, I'm a little concerned about this. Okay? This is a potentially scary, disruptive environment. In fact, the U.S. Secretary of Education, Arnie Duncan, said he's very, very, very interested in MOOCs. Okay? He said this just a couple weeks ago in the state talking about what's going on with MOOCs. Now, one of the things that we're seeing with the way in which they are developed, just to give you an example, Georgia Tech, for years, has had a computer science major, master's degree program that costs somewhere in the neighborhood of, I believe, about $30,000 to $35,000 to complete the master's degree program. They just announced a couple weeks ago that they are going to make a completely online master's degree program in computer science, the same degree. So when you get your degree from Georgia Tech, it's not going to say, I did this online or I did this in the classroom. It's a Georgia Tech computer science degree, which nobody knows the difference of. And their entire master's degree program is going to cost $7,000. So they're competing with themselves with a MOOC model. They are going to charge for it, but they're charging a dramatically lower fee for that degree than they are charging for their in-class experience. And they are estimating that over the next several years they may have 10 to 20,000 people enrolling in that degree program. They're not stupid. This is Georgia Institute of Technology. They're doing the math. 10,000 people at $7,000 is a lot more than 25 people at $30,000. So they recognize the potential business model here, and these are some of the things that we may see happen. But one of the reasons I want to talk about MOOCs in relation to our world in massage education, because I don't see us doing a lot of these things exactly the way they've done in higher education, but yes, I see this influencing us, is let's say you're at a school and you are in a relatively remote, maybe not remote geographical area, but let's say a limited geographical area. And your students can't come to the entire 500-hour, 700-hour program that you have from a great distance away unless they move to your city. But what if they could take a significant portion of their coursework, anatomy, pathology, physiology, some of those cognitive subjects, in an online environment, in a course process like this, from far away, and come in close to do their hands-on technique things in the school, things that they need to be doing in the classroom with the teacher. This may potentially give you reach to a much broader group of students than you would ordinarily be able to get to. And obviously the same thing would be true in content, that this gives you the potential to reach out to much broader geographical boundaries than you might ordinarily be experiencing. So these are some of the things that we have coming down the pipe that for many of us it's just like, just kind of like put on the brakes, like I don't know how I'm going to adapt to this, how I'm going to keep up with it. There's so much things, there's so many of these things that are changing so fast. But we've got to remember the students who are coming to work with us in the coming years will have grown up with these things being natural and normal to them. How many of you in here have seen Sir Ken Robinson's TED Talk about how schools kill creativity? If you have not seen that as an educator, you absolutely have to take a look at that talk. It's an outstanding talk. His name's Ken Robinson. And just look on the TED videos. It's called How Schools Kill Creativity. But Ken Robinson also did another talk when he was talking about technology and education. This is a couple years later. And he had an interesting quote in there that I found kind of interesting. He said that technology is not technology if you grew up with it. So, for example, the telephone to me isn't really technology. It's kind of like it's just the telephone. But that's a very different experience from the 22-year-old who grew up with the internet. That's not technology to them. That's just the web. It's always been there. It's always there. Very different kind of experiences. I've got a little nephew that he's 12 now. He said this when I can't remember, like 8 or 9 years old, so maybe even younger. We were talking about some old music that we were listening to back in the 70s or something like that. And he said, "Oh yeah, Dad, that's on one of those big black CDs that we have, right?" Because that's the view, it's a CD, but it's just big and black. Probably do that. Find something to jam it into, make it play. But those of us who most everybody in this room are not of that generation that grew up with the internet as an assumption. We had to grow into it and learn to adapt to it once it came out. But these are some of the big challenges because our students are coming in with this stuff. We got to find better ways to prepare. And the way that we did things, the way that we learned things, the way we learned how to do things, is not the same way of what's going on in the future for many of these students. So it's going to change a lot of what's happening in the educational arena for lots of us. So a couple other things here that we see coming down the pipe. I'm a big, huge advocate of the hybrid classroom, because this is some place where I think the SARs can really excel with the use of technology to some degree. That is a combination of what happens in the classroom with classroom-based activities and online activities that are done outside the classroom. There was a U.S. Department of Education study that was published in 2010, one of the very first studies trying to make comparisons and look at how accurate or good are the outcomes from online learning compared to face-to-face learning. And what they did is it was sort of a systematic review of many different studies that have been published looking at these various factors. And they found across the board, as a generalized idea, that online education was producing better outcomes than face-to-face classroom learning alone. But hybrid learning, that which involved the classroom and online learning, was producing even better outcomes compared to face-to-face alone than just pure online learning by itself. So this is one of the places where we see the potential for integrating what we do in the classroom with some of these other aspects with online education that allow the educational experience to be far more personalized and also far more unique and creative for the student because, let's say, you got that classroom experience. One student, they get their concept right away, but they still have to sit and listen through the whole long presentation that you might be doing, while somebody else on the other side of the room is not getting it all, would really like them to slow down and back up. And the capability to do that kind of thing with online education components and then come into the classroom and apply those concepts, that's where I see the real strength is. And I've been a huge fan and advocate for looking at those concepts in relation to Bloom's taxonomy of how to move us higher up that cognitive scale of complexity, because too much of what goes on in the classroom lives in the rote memorization categories. And people don't learn how to apply concepts of clinical thinking and critical thinking skills when they're simply going through rote memorization. You've got to move higher at that scale of complexity. And this certainly allows us to be able to get here. So one of the other things that's going to come out of this in the years to come is that credentialing is going to get interesting. Here's what I mean by that. If you have things like the MOOC, where a person can go take a computer science course at Stanford, an economics course at Harvard, an agriculture course at the University of Texas, and put all these things together, where does their credential come from? They got the learning, they got exceptional learning, they put together a great learning package, but the credentialing doesn't come from any one institution. Digital badges. Okay, small percentage. So let me talk about digital badges for just a second. Here's how coursework will potentially, or credentialing will appear at the level of the course, potentially. And this has a huge potential for us in the massage profession, which I'll talk about in just a second. What happens in a digital badge is, just like in the old days, you were in Scouts and you wore your badges on your sash to show that you did camping and origami and whatever different badges were that you were. I didn't get any badges. I liked the whole camping experience and all the whole Scout stuff, and I really loved the outdoor stuff and the whole badge thing. I couldn't kind of get on the acquisition thing. So I never made it too far in the scouting process. But in digital badges, let's say you want to learn something on, let's make it massage for a minute. I want to learn something on kinesiology. Let's take a topic. And I want to go back and review some concepts because my chiropractor that I work for really wants me to beef up my skills a little bit. Well, there's an online course that covers kinesiology related to injury conditions. And when you finish this course, you're awarded a digital badge. But what does the digital badge mean? Well, actually, it's something that can be posted on a website. It's something that can be posted on your LinkedIn profile. It's something that can be accessed by others who want to look at your skills. And they can, the idea behind digital badges and what's coming down the pipe is that a person can, for example, I want to go to Nancy Dale's kinesiology digital badge and click on it, and I get to see her work. Okay? I get to look at what she did and see the quality of her work. So now I'm really getting to more appropriately evaluate what she's done in putting together a portfolio of learning experiences. We've been having this debate in the massage profession for so long about, who are we? Are we this? We are, in fact, this split personality of, it's hard to name the sort of personal care service massage versus the healthcare arena massage, and how do we educate people to work in those different environments? Well, if we're able to agree to a point that we have a fundamental standard of education that people go through, maybe the solution is not some big organization coming up with this, credential that we can't seem to get anybody to do, but maybe the solution is digital badging that would give people certain skill sets that they can demonstrate and represent in various degrees of advanced practice in these different areas. This could really solve a lot of that credentialing issue, and I can clearly see healthcare providers the insurance companies and others who want massage therapists to have some type of credentials that discriminate between, Bill Smith, who just got out of school 6 months ago, and Jill Smith, who's been in practice for 20 years. Because right now there's no way to tell the difference between those two people. And this could be one of those things that could certainly get us to that place. So these are some of the things that we have coming down the pike that could potentially play a huge role in changing what we do in education, how we evaluate and credential it, and where we play a role in this. So what that means for us again is a lot of change. And I know that's not a comfortable thing. It's not a comfortable place to be sitting in. So I want to encourage us all to boldly go where so many of us have not gone before, okay? And to search new horizons and new worlds and find new species out there to teach what we're doing to. But to take these ideas, take these concepts, and really do what we're telling our students to do, which is keep learning, keep teaching yourself, keep finding ways to learn and explore and expand yourself throughout your profession. And the more that we do this, the more that we will be able to affect the future and change the future of what we're doing with massage therapists. So my hope is that at this conference we'll take an opportunity to meet with, network with people, and expand your personal learning networks and start looking at ways that you can bring what we talk about here and what's coming down the pipe into your daily work, school, CE provider, administrator, wherever you fit in that ballpark. So that's my encouragement to all of y'all, and please let's stay in touch and talk and expand this discussion of what we're doing and where we're going to potentially get to. Yes?
There's a great resource if you're interested in following more about what's happening with the MOOCs and technology in higher education. You can get a free subscription to the Chronicle of Higher Education, and they cover a lot of these topics all the time. And they'll just automatically send you an email every few days with summaries of recent articles on a lot of these topics that Whitney's been addressing.
And talking about research resources and things, and thank you, Martha, research resources and things like that that are out there, there is a huge wealth of information out there that is free and so accessible to you. I'm talking a lot about this, my sort of personal learning process. When I was early on in my massage career, again, I grew up in Atlanta, and I was living not far from Emory University, which had a great medical school. And I used to, I know it's kind of sick, but I used to go to the medical school library in my spare time just to go and hang out there. Because I thought it was I love libraries. The smell of the books, to me, it reeks of buried treasure, okay? And in those days, looking at research meant going to this giant thing called Index Medicus and trying to follow all these little paper citations and stuff. And once I left Atlanta and moved out to the remote parts of Oregon out near Ruth's neighborhood on the Oregon coast, I was all of a sudden like, oh my God, there's no medical library here. In fact, the closest library is 3 hours away. But that was also the beginning of the internet era, and now there is so much out there accessible and available to us that so many people don't take advantage of. I really want to encourage you, just as Martha said, please use those resources and take advantage of that. And I'd like to see, we'll continue to do some things like through the LinkedIn Alliance page. We can post a lot of those resources and get a lot of those things out there for people to keep in touch with.
Sorry, would you repeat the name of that journal just so everyone got it?
It's the Chronicle of Higher Education.
Chronicle of Higher Education. There's also some really good resources regularly inside Higher Ed also that covers a lot of these topics on a regular basis. Links to other more lengthy things and great resources on those subjects. All right, so thank you all very much, and let's boldly go where so very few of us have gone before.